Welcome to A Voice and Beyond, Dr. Tracy Latz. How are you?
I'm doing well. I hope that you are as well.
I am. I'm just getting over a cold. So let's pray to the cold gods that I make it through the episode without coughing or having to blow my nose. But thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited about having you as a guest on the show because I believe what we're going to talk about today is going to help so many people, especially those in my industry, creatives, performing artists. And every one of the things that we're going to speak about are challenges that I have faced. And I know so many of my clients face as well. So if you're someone and you've struggled with self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, anxiety, or you've just felt stuck in life, this episode is for you. And as I said, I just want to go tick, tick, tick to all those challenges. So what we're going to do, you're going to help us do a deep dive into some of those limiting beliefs and tell us how we can step into some real transformative work. But Dr. Latz, let's just start with your journey that took you to where you're at now, because your work is such a fascinating blend of science, medicine, and the metaphysical. How did you come across all these? And what drew you to integrate them, all these worlds, into one rather than choosing a single path?
That's a great question. It took a while. When I was young, I was highly intuitive. I was also very quiet. I watched a lot. I felt very much at home in nature and sensed a lot. I was very clairsentient, clear feeling. I would feel or sense things and have clear knowings about that rather than seeing or hearing things. And so I learned to hide those gifts early on because I didn't want to be different. And when people would catch me and go, "How'd you know that?" I would just sort of stop and go, "Uh-oh," and I would get quiet again and say, "Oh, I must have heard it before." So I was very much interested in life, living cells, animals, nature, plants, and what made that tick. What was life about? So I was very much interested in biology, cell biology, and became very scientifically driven, loved to read a lot, and ended up getting a degree and then a master's degree in cell biology, immunobiology, did some research in cancer research for a year after getting my master's degree. And then my future husband, before I was married, he sort of surprised me and said, "I signed you up for something when I was a graduate student." And I was kind of like, "What do you mean?" And he just sort of said, "I signed you up for a test." And I thought he was joking. And he said, "No, I signed you up for the MCAT." And I just kind of said, "What's that?" He said, "It's the medical college aptitude test." And he'd signed me up for it. I asked, "Could you get your money back?" He said, "No." And I said, "How soon?" And he says, "It's in 5 days." And I said, "Okay." And he goes, "What do you mean?" Okay. I said, "Okay, you've paid for it. I may as well take it." And so I was probably the calmest person in the room, and I did very well. And so after working for a year with cancer research, during that year, I applied to med school and went back to my alma mater, Wake Forest University in North Carolina, and went to the Bowman Gray School of Medicine there. And so I very much dove in and understood then not just cells, but how it physically came together in bodies and what wellness looked like physically and what illness looked like and what was going awry in the physical realm. And that seemed great. I was doing that after I graduated my residency training. I was in private practice eventually after serving in the community mental health center, seeing severely, chronically, persistently mentally ill people, and ended up in private practice seeing sort of the not quite as persistent chronic illness, but had a patient who came in who was very troubled, had a lot of trauma from childhood, and was dissociating and was highly suicidal. She had had numerous attempts and self-injurious things and we kind of had this agreement where she finally said, I can't work with you if you keep sending me to a hospital. I said, I can't work with you if you're dead. So we kind of, it was like, okay,
Yeah,
so
fair
you
deal.
have, yeah, you have to be honest with me, and I will do what I can to work through that with you and not put you in the hospital. Well, one day she came in and she would not tell me that she was okay. She wouldn't look me in the eye. She was looking down. She was vague. And at that moment, I sort of thought, I don't know what this is, but all of a sudden I had a clear vision of the outcome of that evening, and it was not going to be livable. And so I kind of went into panic. Our time was pretty much up. She says, "Oh, it's time to leave." And I'm not an MD, but
Hmm.
because I usually don't say you have to do what I say. But I suddenly said, no, I'll say when this is over. And at that point, I kind of thought I've got to come up with something to either get her in a hospital or turn this tide. And all of a sudden, I heard very, very clearly, tell her, and it was two phrases that made no sense to me. And I thought, I
Hmm.
can't tell her that. She'll think I'm nuts. And I heard it again, and this time more emphatically. So I just sort of looked at her and I said, what would you say if I told you this? And all of a sudden she looked at me. She goes, what did you say? And I said it again. What would you say if I told you this? And she goes, how do you know that? And I just go, that's not important. It apparently means something to you. So I said, tell me about that. And it turned out that was two lines out of a poem that was her grandmother's favorite poem. And there's no way I would have known that. I'd never heard of the poem. And so
Wow.
all of a sudden she softened up. You could see the light come back in her eyes. I said, I've never heard about this grandmother. Tell me about her. And she began to light up. And when I knew she was okay, I said, are you going to be okay? She goes, I promise I'll be fine till I see you next week. And so she left, and I was kind of like, what was that about? So it was that pushed me to know I needed to stop putting the lid on what I knew as a kid. And then I also had some physical things that began to show up. I had an abnormal mammogram, and I had already begun to study some metaphysical things, understood spiritual anatomy a little bit to understand that breast is high heart, and high heart is about balance of compassion for self on the left side or to others on the right. And I knew I had tons of compassion for others, but I always put myself on the back burner. And I
Mm.
began to realize I need to do something about compassion for me and begin to say, it's time to take care of Tracy and not just everyone else. And so that really pushed me to dive deeper into metaphysics. And when I changed and turned around my own belief system about myself and got out of the ways that I was sabotaging my own self, feeling that I was unlovable or abandoned or powerless, or I had to do everything alone. I couldn't ask for help. I'd rather die than ask for help. And catching myself saying that, I was like, holy cow, you know,
Mm.
and began to change my own beliefs and would call in sort of a ball of light. And that's where I really, without realizing it was Qigong, I was using Qigong, which is Qi, working with energy, life force, prana, and Gong is practice. So I was every day calling in at least twice a day this huge ball of light to move through, because they said suddenly on a mammogram, everything had been fine up until I was about 40. And then suddenly, out of the blue, never before seen was an issue in my left breast. Nothing like it in the right, never there before. And they said there were so many calcifications in the left breast
Hmm.
that they likely needed to take it. And because it would be so disfiguring to go in and biopsy. And I just said, I need to think about this. My children were young. And I went home that night, had gotten the kids fed and in bed, and my husband was asleep beside me. And I just lay there wide awake, just with tears just flowing, thinking, oh my gosh, I want to be awake to see my kids graduate, to see my kids marry,
Yes.
and I just had this sense of, oh my goodness, what if? And when I got very calm and quiet, suddenly I heard very clearly, do something different. And that's when it just took it deeper and brought that idea of taking care of me, calling in the light. And within the first 6 weeks, I did everything except I did not ask for help from any of my spiritual friends. I was doing everything myself. The OB was worried about me. He said, I'm afraid this is going to be really bad if we don't go ahead and do something. And I said, I feel strongly, let me do this. And so I changed a lot of things, came in, we were going back in for the diagnostic mammogram again 6 weeks later. And at that point, driving there, I thought, okay, I've done all this stuff. I was feeling good about it. And all of a sudden I thought, ooh, maybe I should have asked for help from someone else, not just me sending compassion to me, but opening up to receive it from my spiritual friends, not the people who would be, all in drama of, oh my God, what are you going to do? And when I reached out, knew I needed to do that, and I said I should have done it, I heard myself play that old childhood old tape, I'd rather die than ask for help. And I literally
Mm.
caught my breath going, oh my stars. And I realized what needed to happen. They did the mammogram and we went and sat down with the OBGYN and he said, interesting. He said, nothing's worse. He goes, but nothing's better. And my husband was like, that's it. Schedule the surgery. We'll take them both off. And I said, hold
Mm.
on. I said, hold on.
Yeah.
I want a little bit more time. And my husband was furious. My OB/GYN was sort of like, I would be upset, except that nothing's worse. And I can't explain that. I said, that's okay. So as soon as I left there, I reached out to all my spiritual friends and said, I'm letting you know this is going on because I would have had no problem sending healing from afar. We'd all been trained in that to someone else. But I had not done what I needed to do because I had grown up with this belief, my own self sabotage, that you can't get help from anyone else because when I was a child and I asked for it, it just wasn't available, or I'd be promised it and it wasn't coming. So I created this core belief that I
Yes.
have to do it myself.
Yes.
And as soon as I did that and continued doing everything else that I had been doing, when I went back for the next mammogram in 6 weeks, the OB was like, I can't explain this. And I go, you don't have to. He goes, you don't know what I'm talking about. I said, I think I do. And, and we kind of went back and forth and he goes, but you don't know. And I said, okay. He pops it up. He goes, this was for years, normal, 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 then abnormal, then abnormal. And here's today. He goes, it's normal. And I go, yeah. He goes, I can't explain it. I said, that's okay. I
You
know.
don't have to. I have all the answers right now. I called in help from my spiritual friends, and
That's
and he would have looked at you like, what have you been smoking?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I'd studied deeper and I studied Qigong, I studied biogeometry now, I've studied, Reiki, but then I took it deeper. Reiki is cool and a lot of people use it. It is based on an egregore. You're using symbols to connect with the work everyone else has done and the intentions, but it's as good as the intentions as everyone has put out there. And so I do something now, it's multi-dimensional healing and it goes beyond. It's not me, it's just being a conduit, as is anyone else, and it's highly teachable. But I love understanding who we truly are, that we're
Mm.
animating this physical body, but we have this etheric body that is what people do acupuncture on, or when people talk about chakras, it's where the energy, that essence of life force enters our body and then flows along energy meridians. And with all that training, I love to teach and help people to get out of their own way, because while we have the physical and that etheric, we also have our thoughts and our emotions. And that's what trips us up. It's our inner child, which is our emotional one, and our inner adult. And you can use very simple tools and techniques to sort of help pop through getting in your own way, as well as then becoming aware of what are the core we call it the shrink's greatest
Hmm.
hits. You know, what brings you in to see a psychiatrist or a therapist? You know, it's these 10 primary core faulty beliefs that we take to heart, and then we have big feelings and thoughts about it. And it's those lower vibrational, when you think of, when things are in resonance, like when you're doing musical singing,
Mm,
everything, when it really resonates, it's like, gosh, that's glorious. But when it becomes very discordant,
mm,
it kind of affects our own etheric field. And that's where we can suddenly have a acute issue come up physically or a chronic issue come up. But it's also where, once you understand what is that frequency or vibration of our thoughts and our emotions that's causing that, and you get back into resonance by shifting those lower baser sort of fear-based thoughts, and we get back into the heart center and that compassionate agape love, not the vroom vroom, lower chakra love, but that wonderful, when you just hit that note perfectly and you're like, gosh, that's beautiful, or you hear it, or you
mm.
see, your loved one, and you just open your heart. That gets you back out of your head, calms the thoughts, rebalances those emotions, because we instantly get out of fear and get back into our heart of who we truly are in our soul. And that's where you tap into all of your gifts, whether that be being on stage and being vocal, or playing a musical instrument, or speaking. It creates what we call, in that metaphysical teaching at the school, I call it my adult Hogwarts school, we called it magnetic resonance. When you're in there, suddenly everything is right. It's like being in the zone, and you feel connected to everyone and everything, no matter how far you are in distance and physicality from them, you're not. And that's beautiful.
I feel like I need some sort of degree to understand most of that. To be perfectly honest, we need to start breaking this down.
Yes.
Dr. Latz, that was a lot of information.
I know. I'm sorry.
Do not apologize. I mean, we're all here to learn. And I am a little bit selfish in terms of the guests that I select for my show, because I want to learn. I'm very open to hearing new information and deciding for myself what I choose to believe and what I choose
Yes.
not to believe. And I urge listeners who are here today listening to Dr. Latz to approach this information in the same way. Please receive it with an open mind and an open heart, because Dr. Latz, you come from the medical field. You come from science and from research. You have that background, and you have been on this transformative journey where you have now realized everything I learned in medical school is not going to work with all my patients. Essentially, that is it, right?
Yeah.
So everything
Yes.
you're describing has changed the way that you approach medicine. And to be perfectly honest, and I'm an open book on this show, I have been to a psychiatrist many years ago. I went to a psychiatrist because I was dealing with trauma and grief. I had lost my first husband through suicide, and my own father, who was the closest person to me, died 15 months later. So there was a lot going on. And I was sat in front of a psychiatrist who asked me a bunch of questions like, so if your father was here, what would you say to him right now? Go away and read this book and take these pills. It was so sterile. I did not resonate with the person. I felt there was no empathy, compassion, care. It was like a one size fits all approach to dealing with my issues. I stopped the treatment after a few weeks because I would leave there feeling worse about myself than when I first arrived. And so I have tried many different modalities, and I'm going to talk about the one that I am practicing right now, which I love and I'm fully addicted to, which some people will also say is woo-woo. But before we go any further, you use the word metaphysics.
Yeah.
Can you please just explain what that is for us?
Excellent. Metaphysics is above, beyond physical. And Western medicine has really focused on primarily physicality. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we look for physical signs of illness. We take blood pressures, we look at temperature, we push and prod and thump and just sort of look. But quite frankly, in the very early beginning days of medicine, back in the times of Imhotep, back in ancient Egypt and prior to Egypt, there were people who were healers that were physician, healer, priests. They looked at physical, they looked at spiritual, they looked at thoughts, they looked at toxins in the environment, and they looked at food, what we put in our body. Now, you know, we have learned a lot in Western medicine by separating all of that out and focusing on, we've learned wonderful things.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we're now suddenly, you know, we have a new discovery, and ancient wisdom would go, no, it's old. You know, where we talk about mindfulness or we talk about acupuncture. You know, now when I
Yes.
started med school, they were like, acupuncture. It's kind of like, is that woo woo? And now it's absolutely acceptable. We understand it, although we don't, because in Western medicine, they're like, yeah, the acupuncturists, they put needles in certain places. And I remember in med school, people going, okay, we were trained vein, artery, nerve. Then is it next to the vein or the artery or the nerve? What is it they're putting the needle in? And the issue is, it's in the etheric field because you can, and that's metaphysical. It's beyond the physicality, it's in this other range. Now, this is actually fitting with what we know in quantum physics now. When I was a kid, and
Ah,
and they talked to us about an atom. Now, I have a pet pterodactyl because back in the day they would come out and they had this ball and it had, you know, these other sticks coming out of it and balls on it. They were like, this is the nucleus and these are the electrons. And you have to just imagine that they're flying around this thing. And I remember sitting there in fourth grade going, okay, I'm trying to imagine it. I don't see how it works, but I'll take it on faith. Well, now, because it was sort of all that physicality is there. And if all of these little molecules are in here and there are these little stick ball things sticking out, and that's making up my hand, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Now we know in quantum physics that there are these subparticles. And now we know even more that out of an atom, tiny, tiny atom,
mm-hmm.
only 4 to 6% of it is physical. That means 94 to 96% is not. And what they're calling that not physical, they're calling it dark energy. Doesn't mean it's Voldemort, doesn't mean that
Yes.
it's negative. It
Evil.
means
Mm.
it means it's like yin in Chinese medicine. Yang is seen and physicality, and yin is sort of spiritual, unseen. We don't quite know what it is, but it's there. And they're saying this dark energy is what will make that physicality, that little bit of it, make it manifest however it does.
Mm.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so they began to do studies, starting to look at what is it that affects this dark energy that takes this tiny bit of the physicality and makes it make this shape versus that shape, the same molecule. What is it? And they finally realized it's us. It's our consciousness. It is our thoughts and feelings. And in the ancient wisdom training that I went through, we were taught about our thoughts have little legs that go out and create in the world. So be mindful of what you
Mm.
think about. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
positive psychology and
Mm-hmm.
affirmations are, and the
Mm-hmm.
secret. And
Mm-hmm.
what we also were taught was our thought, if you think of it like an arrow, that's the thought. Now, our emotion behind the thought, think of it like that's a bow.
Yes.
pulling it back with a strong emotion, or we're kind of like, yeah, maybe with a little. And but you put the thought in there. Now, how far will the arrow go if you're kind of like, maybe I'm not sure I feel much about it, versus yes, I feel this,
Mm-hmm.
whether that is, oh my goodness, with all my heart, and compassion, I love this, or whether it's, I hate this. That power of how big the emotion is, that
Mm-hmm.
is the fuel. And our emotions have enough power behind that to push a rocket to the moon. But we create for ourselves. Now, a lot of people studied The Secret and the idea of affirmations, and a lot of people got excited about it. And then they were like, yeah, put up all these pictures of all this wonderful stuff. And I was like, yeah. And then they go, it didn't work for me. And I'll go, well, tell me about that. Well, I got the dollar bill and I put extra zeros on it and I taped it to the ceiling and I looked at it.
Oh.
And I said, what did you think about that? Well, I looked up at it and I would go, well, I'm doing this because I kind of heard maybe this could work. I said, but how did you feel? They go, I know stuff like that doesn't work for me. Okay, so they're sending this thing out like, and a lot of the people were saying back when that sort of came out, people were saying, oh, don't worry about the fear-based negative emotions or thoughts because studies have shown. I'm like, what studies? Studies have shown that we create much more powerfully when we're in our loving heart as opposed to when we're in our fear-based mind or anger or guilt or shame.
Mm-hmm.
And the training in the ancient mystery schools throughout civilization would say, no, how dare you say we are powerful when we create this way, but we're not when we do it that way. It's like, so that is the basis of beginning to understand. When you become aware of it, you begin to kind of go, hold on, where am I approaching this right now? Am I approaching this, whatever this decision is or whatever it is I'm doing, am I
Mm.
doing it out of compassion or am I doing it out of fear? And fear shows up as anxiety, anger, guilt, shame,
Mm.
abandonment, my heart's too
Mm-hmm.
broken,
Mm-hmm.
all that fear of the unknown. And that's where, when we understood that in the ancient mystery school training, and people were taken through different levels of being aware of it, and with that awareness, having the choice to either use those tools and begin to clear those old foundational beliefs and begin to replace them with more positive ones and get out of our own way, you suddenly step more into the gifts and the abilities that you actually have and that you are emanating here. I say this is Earth School. You know,
Yes.
who we are is metaphysical. We are not this physical body, but we're animating a physical body here. And because this is Earth and it's a binary system, we're animating typically a male body or a female body, even though who we truly are may not, as a soul or whatever you understand that to be, may not have any of that put on it. Uh,
Mm.
so it really opens up for creation in different ways and frees you to stop limiting yourself. And that's how we self-sabotage. I mean, it is those thoughts and emotions, which I say is that inner child and the inner adult. The inner child is the one who's like, either I'm really mad or I'm scared in the corner, or is like, "Oh, look at the wonder of the world." It's the emotional one, but the inner adult is like, that inner child needs to be thrown in a closet. We just can't have this. They're just going to mess this all up.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I the way that I interpret what you're saying, I'm going to use the word vibration and energy.
Yeah.
Yes, because I believe that we are all energetic beings and
Yes.
we vibrate at different levels. So people, I do have some woo-woo in me also. Listeners, do not judge. And that some of us vibrate at a lower frequency, and they're the things that you described:
Right.
fear, shame, guilt, anger. And when we vibrate at those levels, that we are not creating the world and the life that we truly want, because we are stuck in those. And then you have people who are vibrating at a higher level and have peace and joy and compassion and empathy and love, are vibrating at a higher level, and they are most likely the ones to manifest. And I actually did a workshop on this last week. Funnily enough, strangely enough, it was meant to be. But I did understand this. And from what I understand, this kind of talk has been around, these thoughts and philosophies, since Einstein.
Even before.
Even before. But from a science-based person, we wrap it up with that science bow.
Yes.
All these discoveries came about around the time of Einstein. And now you have thought leaders such as Wayne Dyer, Abraham Hicks, Dr. Joe Dispenza. There are so many thought leaders now who are all going, I've found the Holy Grail. But this has actually been around for a long time. And how we
Yeah.
interpret it, I mean, that was
Yeah.
my interpretation of what you just talked about in a very simplistic, I mean, there's so many more layers.
Yeah.
But this kind of thing has been around a long time. And for those of you who don't believe it, okay, when you spend time around somebody who is really draining, you know, you enter a room and you're feeling good about yourself, and you enter a room and you spend time with somebody who is complaining, who is feeling sad, or just woe is me, or they're in a victim mentality, or they're angry, and you spend enough time with them, you start to feel your own energy deplete. Your own battery starts to get used.
Yep.
And you feel like you have to recharge. And that is what I'm talking about too. So if you can't identify it in yourself, I know when I'm around those people, I feel like I just need to get out of here because I have no energy left. When I'm around you, you suck all my energy dry.
Yep. Those are the energy vampires for sure that everyone kind of talks about. There are ways to protect yourself from that,
Mm-hmm.
actually. There's a Chinese medicine Qigong movement called Woji. Very, very simple. What you
Mm-hmm.
do is you take your thumb and
Mm-hmm.
you put it in the center of your palm and gently curl your fingers around it. Not tight, we're not punching someone, you'd break
Mm-hmm.
your thumb. Gently. Now feel how vulnerable your energy feels with hands open versus hands in that posture. You begin to feel this typically feels much more protected. Now, you even can
Mm-hmm.
do it just with one hand.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to hold it up. You could have it in your lap. You could be
Mm-hmm.
talking to someone and start feeling like, they're draining me. And as soon as you do this, it stops. If you're on a stage or you're holding something, you're busy with your hands and you can't put it down and do this, you can take your toes as you're standing there and have your toes grab the ground. Just kind of lean a little bit forward towards the
Mm-hmm.
ball of your
Like
feet and just
curl.
let them just grab a little bit to the ground. And this earth energy will put a shield up in front of you and it will just. I teach a lot of kids this when I see them who have fear of having to get up in front of the class and give a report, or people with fear of public speaking. You can just easily give them some of these tools and
Mm-hmm.
they can transform them. And then if they have overwhelming anxiety, you can pop it very quickly doing some other
Wow.
things.
Can I tell you, that is so bizarre, because when I feel sick, this is what I do instinctively. I like, until you said this is what you do to protect yourself, you do this. And I followed your instructions then. It came to me that I do this when I'm unwell.
Yeah.
I've seen my brother put his thumb, when he's talking, sometimes he'll hold his thumb. What does that mean? Is there something to that?
That's interesting because it's sort of I wonder if his energies are a bit crossed. You can kind of see if someone's energies are not, it can be flowing in a backward way. There's a way to correct it. But people like that will want to do the opposite. So doing this, but I'm doing it this.
Mm,
And it may be connecting a circuit or trying to correct where those etheric, his energy meridians, may be running backward, and that what's called the small heavenly circuit are not crossing how they need to. Uh, Often sports people,
hmm.
I'm going kind of off the reins here.
That's
Some sports people often will teach kids, let's do jumping jacks. Jumping jacks are the worst thing you can do. It causes your energies to become unbalanced.
I would
And
say
so,
chaotic.
yes, yes, because they should, much like a DNA helix, they should gently cross midline. Our energy meridian energy should naturally be able to crisscross. And that's calming. When it just shoots straight down, where we become agitated. And so there are ways that you can teach someone to correct that. I'd started telling my kids, and their coaches would be like, what's going on with the Latz kids? Because after they were doing these sports, they would be
Mm,
doing the jumping jacks. And then I'd look at them from the sidelines and I'd kind of point at them, and they would start crisscrossing and touching their elbows to their opposite knee for a little bit.
hmm.
And the coach would be like, what are you doing? And they'd be like, nothing. It's just what our mom does. And the coach would roll
Mm.
their eyes. But
Yes.
it changes everything to sort of be aware that we are these energetic beings and we do respond to different frequencies. And that's why,
Mm, hmm.
sound healing is really a thing, and colors are really a thing, and why acupuncture doesn't have to be done just with needles. You can do it with lights, or when you're doing clinical Qigong or medical Qigong, you can, once you learn that, use sword finger and you are shooting energy out, and you can just come and go along with sword finger energy to work on or remove blocks that are going on in energy meridians. And this is what the ancients knew, predating Einstein, going back before ancient Egypt. You go back, and even in India, the early Chinese energy meridians and things that predated it, they go back to these drawings, which are truly just like the
Mm.
energy meridians you see on maps now that people use. 5,000 years ago, they knew this.
Incredible.
So we are rediscovering it. And, what it is it's time for us to know this, because
Mm,
we need to be aware for our advancement as humans, our evolution. We need to be much more aware of frequency,
mm.
much more aware of the power of that, the power of the frequency of our thoughts, the power of the frequency we choose to put ourselves in. Like you were saying, when you're around people of that sort of, lower vibration, it doesn't mean they're terrible people. It just
No,
means people get into these fear-based negative thoughts, and we're kind of in a time in the world, certainly here in the States, where
we
a
are.
lot of people are like, and I'm like, okay, we need to stop energizing that, and we need to mitigate it, transform that anger, that fear, and begin to get back into the rhythm of who you
Mm,
actually are. And
mm,
that's the big game changer. That's
mm.
where you really can change everything. And when enough people do that, it creates, like in music, when you have two or more people that are hitting that same perfect tone, you get that, ooh, where it's like, and that's where the healing happens. So if we can get enough people in the world to kind of be in that space, we could see some interesting shifts everywhere. And
Yes.
I agree with you. I tell people, don't believe a word I say unless it resonates with you. And if you're not
Mm,
sure, put it on a shelf and
mm.
pick it up
Exactly.
later if it makes sense.
Exactly. And everyone's journey is different. I'd like to go into some of the more specific challenges that people are facing today. And I just want to, which you started to touch upon, was politics. But about 18 months ago, I was in a situation that triggered me to go to spiral. I started to suffer with chronic anxiety, and it was really difficult for me to get out of the spiral. I tried all the breath work techniques that I knew. I was already doing meditation. Nothing was working. And a friend of mine suggested that I do hypnotherapy and gave me the name of a practitioner. Now, this practitioner was a or is a psychologist
Mm-hmm.
who has studied Chinese medicine and has also studied naturopathy
Mm-hmm.
and many different modalities. And I have hypnotherapy sessions every week and still continue to do so. And he has really managed to change my thought process and my vibrations. So I'm
Yeah.
vibrating, I would like to say, somewhere around peace and joy is where I'm at right now. And I started at fear, shame, but fear was the biggest one. I was really
Mm-hmm.
fearful because of this horrid situation that I felt I had no control over. And his approach, I believe, is very holistic because we do a little bit of talk at the start, and then he sets the intention behind the hypnotherapy based on what we talk about in that session. And as I said, my anxiety was situational, but I feel that since COVID, life hasn't truly returned to normal for
Yeah.
anybody. And then you add the pressures of
Yeah.
politics, and that's on a daily. The global economy, people are losing their jobs, people can't pay their mortgages, the increase in youth crime, domestic violence. I mean, the world is war. The world has gone mad. But what are the most common challenges that you're seeing in your patients or your clients today, would you say?
In terms of, they're talking about all of those things. They're talking about fear about where we're going in the states. It's sort of, what's happening. Are we following our Constitution anymore? A lot
Mm,
of people are asking a lot of things. Are we seeing the
yes.
end of this great experiment? And so there's a lot of people that are angry. There's a lot of people that are afraid. I've seen some people say, I'm becoming an expat. I'm heading out of here. A lot of people are in this fear, the anger. They're feeling abandoned by their own politicians in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Their heart's broken.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and, we're seeing the highest suicide rates, quite frankly, in every population, from kids to adults and to
Yes.
even certain minority groups that we really hadn't seen that much before. It's
Mm,
everyone's sort of in this great turmoil. And what I end up doing with people is, hearing them out, hearing where they are, and then becoming aware that all of this is leading them to feel powerless. And what's the point? I feel powerless. And get them back into that center and then help them understand the power they do have. With that, we will use different tools and techniques. And, I have videos about those on Shift Your Life TV on YouTube. The big go-to ones, there's the Woju, which we talked about there. There is an over energy correction to kind of help rebalance that spiral calming. There's Qigong Emotional Release Technique, and we have a video also there. And all those are for free, and they're quick tools. We have the core faulty beliefs people go to, which is, I'm unlovable. And that's a core faulty belief. If you don't transform that one, you won't transform anything else because you'll believe you deserve it because I'm
mm,
unlovable.
Wow.
And so we always start
Mm,
with that when we've taught classes or seminars. And, we
mm,
had a book, Bye-Bye Self-Sabotage, Drop Your Baggage, Love Your Life. We carry you through those, and it starts. We don't just say, yeah, this is it. Sorry, you probably all have it to a degree, and then go, let's go on to the second one. We instead say, here's the issue, and now we're going to give you a battery of tools and techniques, because some people are more young. They like the physical. I want to do the tapping. We have the EFT protocols. We have the Qigong Emotional Release, but we also have color, sound. We have vibration of different ways, humming, tones that will resonate with what the energy center or the frequency vibrational center is in this etheric field of our body. And when you rebalance these, you suddenly feel calmer. And so we carry you through after feeling unlovable and challenging that and replacing it with something else. Then you go to guilt and shame, anger and resentment, and you get tools all the way through to use. Then we go to feeling abandoned. A lot of people are like, I'm all alone. Right
mm,
now, the chief complaint, just about everyone, certainly during pandemic and since, is I am lonely. They may have
mm.
20,000
Yes.
followers on their
Yes.
social media, but they are lonely. They do not
Yes.
feel connected. And we have one of the chapters or stages that we work people through has to do with that I'm abandoned. And often it comes back to I'm abandoning myself when I'm that lonely and I'm not connecting, or I'm connecting with everything except for real people. That's my little concern about AI. I actually have a patient who's like, AI, I love it. It's my friend. And then they come in
I
all
love
ups.
AI.
Well, it works
But
great
it's
until
not my friend. It
now,
has
see,
no emotion.
see, and then she'll come in and be like, "It didn't remember me," and it's like a huge crisis, and they're crying, and I'm like, "I told you it's AI." but
I think you
but
have to have context around AI.
it can be helpful. It can be helpful, but don't rely on it, people. And don't rely on it to write your book. A lot of people are like, I'm writing a book with AI. I hope
Yes.
you're taking it and making it yours, because it will not resonate with the frequency of your voice, because it's not, no matter how much you train it, it's not going to have your voice. So bring your voice. That's the unique thing about you. And, step on the stage, write that book from your voice, use your voice. Going through the tools and techniques, we get through to heartbreak. A lot of people think, my heart's so broken, no one's going to love me. My heart's so broken, I don't even want to try again. Lack of self love, that's another huge issue. And again, we give tools for each of these once we describe what that looks like. And a lot of people go, oh my gosh, that's me. It's like, yeah, you're human. We all have these to some degree, but you'll often find a few of them are your bigger go tos. And then we look at the fear of the unknown.
Mm,
And that is what keeps that third eye, that ability to open up, that spiritual vision, or that ability to connect to things that aren't just that physical part of the atom, the 4 to
hmm
6%, but actually become like a shaman almost, where you can connect metaphysically beyond to other dimensions, because quantum physics also tells us that there are other dimensional elements of us. And a lot of people kind of go, wait a minute, I've seen that in movies, but it really is so. And I think it's
hmm
kind of cool that that's coming out in theater in different ways to sort of kind of help us remember who you really are, because this physicalness, that's not who we are. And this is Earth School. I tell people that a lot.
Yes.
We
Yes.
we are here to learn, and we learn from interacting with one another, relationships. And even if it's a horrible relationship and we kind of get beyond that, to look back and say, what was the gift of that relationship? What
What
was the
was the
gift?
learning?
Yes.
I have been in that relationship that was very toxic. And that's what happened to me 18 months ago, was dealing with somebody in a very toxic relationship. And I went to a shaman in Bali, and he said to me, I needed to stay in that relationship. And there was coercive control. There was so many things going on in this relationship that were literally, I felt like I was dying in this relationship as a human being. And the shaman said, no, you need to stay in this relationship. And I left there hating on this shaman. I actually told a friend of mine, I hated, and hate is a really harsh word. I
Uh-huh.
hate this shaman. He is full of rubbish. He was making me stay in this horrible relationship. I ended up staying in the relationship. And there are still so many lessons to be learned, because he said, both you and this other person, you have a lot to learn. And the only way you're going to learn is through each other. And I tried to pull the pin on the relationship, and this person wouldn't leave, but started to do work on themselves. And our level of communication has gone through the roof. The relationship is in such a different place to what it was 18 months ago, that I now thank the shaman. Now I see, because I honestly could not see at that time. And I just thought this guy was a fraud and he had no clue. But I feel like I just want to now just go back to a couple of little things that when I'm working with people in the creative industries, that there are some specific things or common denominators in terms of challenges that creatives and performing artists seem to face. One is self-sabotage. And I'll give a very basic example, that say we have a singer and they have an important gig, or it could be a performance, or it could be a competition coming up. And this same singer, every time they've got this important thing coming up, they get sick. And I call that self-sabotage. Can you explain what that is and what the root of self-sabotage, where that comes from?
Oh gosh, self-sabotage is always fear-based in some realm. And when I say fear, we are always either in compassion or we're in fear. That's it. We're in our heart or we're in our head in fear. And so spiritual anatomy, that etheric anatomy, when someone always gets sick, the issue is, what kind of sick? Is it I get a migraine? Is it I
It's
suddenly have a
that.
sore throat? Throat?
It's
Okay.
that. It's
Okay.
something that impacts their instrument.
Okay.
So it could be
Okay.
a cold, a head cold,
Okay.
laryngitis,
Okay.
bronchitis.
Okay. Ancient wisdom would tell us that suddenly there's this fear of my creative expression. It may be self-doubt. I'm not sure I'm able to do it. Or maybe I'm going to get up there and they're going to say you're horrible and they're going to cut my head off. But when you look at this energy center, lower
Mm-hmm.
jaw
Mm-hmm.
down to top of the shoulders,
Sure.
that is your that chakra area is about your creative expression. It is the throat chakra, and it will engage your thyroid, your parathyroid, your throat proper. And when people say, okay, but it started with sinus, I have drip from here. Now it's kind of like, okay, let's take this back. This is what we would do in the ancient mystery school, because we couldn't just go, oh, I have a cold. All of our other colleagues would go, what's that about, Tracy? Oh, it's just a cold. Come on, metaphysician, you know better. It's about I have a fear, and my fear is shutting down my ability to see the big picture. So I begin to close down here. Okay, I'm afraid.
So people who aren't looking, you are touching your forehead. You have your hands across your forehead.
Right. It's that third eye center, the third eye, when we're open and awake, we see everything. But when it's closed, we can't see the forest for the trees. We're overwhelmed. And it's like, ah. So I'm told I have to be on stage, I have to do this. And if it's where I'm always, suddenly I get congestion, and now it begins to drip from my
Mm-hmm.
sinuses.
Mm-hmm.
Sinuses, everything, upper teeth, jaw,
Yes.
all the way up to the top of the third eye area.
Yes.
That's all governed by third eye. Your spiritual vision, your spiritual hearing, your physical hearing, and your physical vision. So now in metaphysics, when we look at that from spiritual anatomy, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
liquid is about emotions. So our emotions have closed this up and it's dripping down now and it's irritating, which means I'm inflamed, I'm angry, there's stuff going on to inflame my creative expression, and that isn't just voice. Your creative expression, if you're a writer, could be suddenly I get writer's block. I can't do it. I just can't do it. My
Mm-hmm.
creative expression is blocked.
Right.
So, that's what that is. When you always have the same thing show up with somebody, and I could see that once I had training, and I would have, as a physician, someone would be coming to see me. First visit as a psychiatrist, I'm asking all the, psychiatric questions, and I ask about physical history, all this stuff. And when I hear, oh, I'm afraid my husband, I can't speak up, I'm
Mm.
afraid to speak up,
Mm-hmm.
or when I do speak up, I'm everyone says I'm so angry when I speak, and I'll get that whole history, and I'll kind of come back. Anything else going on with you physically? No, not at all. I'll go, how about thyroid? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I have thyroid disease. I'm like, yeah, I knew it because it's in this area. It's there's already, I know from where they're talking about their emotions, their fear, or their anger, both of those can create inflammation here.
Mm.
And, in my creative expression, if that's where the thought goes. And in Chinese medicine, we can talk about anger is held in the liver, rage is held in the gallbladder,
Ah,
sadness is held in the lungs. So,
yes.
the kidney holds fear. And, the upper
Wow.
part of the kidney meridian is here. The lower part is the wellspring of life at the bottom of your feet, but it crosses the knees. So people who have knee issues, you're kind of like, you ever have any kidney issues? You have a lot of fear. You start finding they have fear and they may have kidney stones, and that's because it all energetically interrelates. So when I see people, I really do have that integrative approach,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
because
I love
that
that.
that training brings in the intuitive
Mm.
part.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see things. I had one woman walk in, and I kind of was like, huh, because she came in and there was someone who came in with her, and I watched that, and I kind of was like, she sat down, and this person, it was a woman, stood behind her, and that's because, again, as a kid, I would like be aware of things, but no, can't have that, put the lid on it. But by going back to training in the ancient mystery school, the first course there, I went because I wanted to take spiritual anatomy. I saw that. I go, I need that. I just know I need that. And they said, that's great. Well, our in-depth channeling class will start. And I go, excuse me? I said, no, I want to take this class. They go, yes. You've never been here before? No, sir, I haven't. Okay. First class is in-depth channeling. And I said, what's that? He goes, mediumship 101. And I was like, no, like, and it took me a while to sort of call back and say, okay, I need to kind of do this. But you can begin to be aware of different things and vibrations and frequencies and begin to trust it, because
Mm.
the more you meditate, the more you center and get into your heart, you will share your gifts. If you are a singer or a musician, those gifts will flow so much more readily.
Mm.
But as you do that, the more you meditate, you're exercising and learning how to connect more those spiritual, metaphysical gifts to be able to become like that shaman. And I say you become a clearer pipette, because I'm a biologist. And you clear the pipette and you can get things to flow. When you get
Yes.
things to flow, you get hits, you get knowings, And with that, you can do art. You know, I do intuitive art that's done with eyes closed. I've always sang, not professionally, but, you know, always did. That was how I dealt with when I had big feelings as a kid. And I always sang to my kids. And, you know, all my kids did musicals at some point or the other. And so they learn to do that too. And
Mm.
we do that when we get in our heart.
It's interesting since I've been having the hypnotherapy and I now use a hypnotic track for my meditations in the morning. My intuition has gone through the roof, and things that I pick up with my students in my teaching studio, I will ask a student a question and they will just look at me and go, how, like, what just happened? Because, you know, when you're working with a voice, you're working with the psyche as well. And when a student walks in, I'll just say, how's your week been? You know, is everything going well for you? And I know perfectly well, I've just tuned in and and I know that there's something up. And I know that I'm not going to get anything out of that singer until we kind of just do a little breath work, something just to calm their nervous system. And I'll say, okay, are you stressed or are you anxious today? How can you tell? I just know, you know, or just things like there was a student who was struggling with their voice. And I know this isn't a thing in the US anymore, but intuitively, I just asked, do you mind if I ask what your pronouns are?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, they, them. I said, are you at the moment going through some kind of identity crisis where you're manipulating your voice as you try and find where you fit in? And they said, 100%. I said, so this is not coming from singing. The issues are coming from speaking and how you use your voice in your speech. And then that led to greater work. But it's
Very
just
good.
weird. It's some of the things that happen in the studios now based on just being able to tap into what's going on with the student. But knowing how to deal with it very lightly, you have to tread very lightly and very carefully.
Yes, you meet people where they are, for
You
sure.
meet people where they are and you back off when you have to, when you know that you have to. The other thing, just kind of moving on a little bit, when I work with my coaching clients, another one of the greatest challenges is that quite often they feel stuck. They're either somebody who wants to embark on a particular career path and just don't. There's always an excuse for why they don't, or they're mid-career in their creative career and they feel stuck there. They feel that they want to do better. They have the ability to do better, but they just cannot take that next step. So, how do you reframe that? I mean, what are the lies that these people are telling themselves that stop them from embarking on
Ah,
that career path?
uh, it could be fear of success. And what would that look like? You know, if I
Mm-hmm.
succeed, then what? Then what are they going to want from me? If I succeed, I'll have to travel more or travel around the world. And that means I leave my family or my girlfriend or whatever. Or if I try it and I fail, then I've quashed my great dream. And I'd rather have that dream and have it as something I go, yeah, I'm striving for that, than have me say, I shot for the dream and it crashed. And what you do is you just kind of say, all right, let's play that out. Close your eyes and picture, okay, say you're going to Carnegie Hall and you make this great voice or whatever it is that you're doing there, or step into this career, you suddenly want to become a speaker or a writer, and you suddenly say, I'm going to go do this. Play it out. What happens? You get up there and what happens? I fail. Then what happens? Oh, because most people just stop at the fear of what if. What happens? Oh. Well, they say, no, I failed that audition. And then what happens? Oh, well, I guess I either do it again because I guess actually, if they don't want me, it may not be a good fit for me and I could go somewhere else.
Yes.
But we sit there and say, instead of going to the, and then I don't want to look at it. Let's say you do this and it's horrible. And now what? They're going to put it on
Mm.
national news. It's going to come out on NPR. There are going to be
Hmm.
billboards. And then what? And you just keep making them say, and what happens next? And where do you go from there? If we play out this fantasy, because you get stuck in the fantasy of the fear of, I'm afraid. What happens? Okay, do it
Mm.
afraid. Do
Hmm.
it afraid. But look at it and see what's the worst outcome.
That's
And
what I
so
say.
so what,
Yeah. What's the worst thing that can happen here? Is anyone going to die?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's a bit dramatic, but
Yeah.
it's
But
true.
some people are afraid that relationships will die. Like if I succeed, oh my goodness, I will have made it, but I come from a poor family. And then they'll think, because we used to all growing up, they go, oh, they're
Mm.
highfalutin. They're not one of us. And so
Hmm.
subconsciously,
Hmm.
there's this belief
Poverty
of,
mindset, I
yeah,
call it. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that the same reason why people suffer from imposter syndrome? Or is that something different? Because I had a career for 35 years as a professional singer, and never, ever did I feel like I had imposter syndrome. And I was thrown into all sorts of work. I did TV, I did radio, I worked to massive audiences. I sang in front of the Prime Minister. And I never felt a sense of imposter syndrome. Then I entered academia and totally felt like an imposter. And I know now because I was telling myself a massive lie, and that was, I'm not smart. I never believed myself to be smart or academic. And
Right.
even after obtaining a PhD in writing an academic textbook, I still told myself I wasn't smart.
Yeah.
So is it because we lie to ourselves?
Absolutely. These are core lies, are beliefs that we bought into. Often as a child, we can do it later, but we have core beliefs we set up, some of them by the time we're 3 years of age. And with those core faulty beliefs, if we believe we're unlovable, then we're afraid that if I step out there, people are going to go, God, look at her. She's unlovable. I would never get up in front of the class,
Mm,
or I would never do this. Or with that imposter syndrome, it really is that self doubt. It goes from either I'm unlovable or guilt or shame. The guilt or shame that I don't have the high grades or the credentials, or the guilt or shame that I didn't go to the right school or I didn't come from the right family. And someone's going to come into the room and go, you shouldn't be here.
mm.
And really, if you're in the room, you should be there. you know?
Yes. Yes.
Because you're there for a reason. And this is Earth School, and it's for us to stretch ourselves and be able to say, I have this core belief, and then stop and look at it. It really, when people don't look at it, that's when they get stuck. If they really just stop, and that's what we get trained to do as a metaphysician, you're taught to, okay, have a look at that, Tracy. What's that about? Sort of, if it's a giant dragon, oh my God, look at it. It's so scary. Okay, let's stop for a minute and let's start taking the scales off that dragon
Ah,
and
bit
look at the
by bit.
pieces. Yes. And once you do that, you go, oh, it's actually a beautiful little salamander or a beautiful little lizard. That's
Mm,
not the scary thing. We
mm,
have to put eyes on it. When people go, I don't know what I'm afraid of, close your eyes. Close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, and picture that scenario you're so afraid of. Put eyes on it. What is it?
mm,
And that's when they'll go, oh, it's a pair of scissors. Keep going. What is that? And then suddenly it'll come up that it's going to cut me, or it's going to cut the cord to my family, or it'll just play out. But often just getting them to visualize hand on the heart, because we're not
mm.
hand on our heart, we're connected more to the essence of who we are that's bigger. And that gives a window for our soul or that bigger essence of us to kind of come in and go, well, thank heavens they're open to me now, and tell them something or give them a vision of something. So telling them, close your eyes. So I'm not looking around here. I don't know. Close your
Yeah.
eyes, put eyes on it, focus on it, put eyes on it. What is it?
Mhm.
So,
Incredible. I love this work, Dr. Latz. I just feel that there is so much more to learn. I don't feel like an imposter because I actually have found a label for imposter syndrome where I've reframed it in a way that's a lot kinder. When I feel that I'm an imposter, it's simply a message to my brain saying that I need to learn a little bit more about this. There are
oh,
still more lessons that I need to learn. I don't know
nice.
everything that I want to know about this particular topic or about this thing. I can still do better. So that's how I reframe imposter syndrome.
I love that.
Thank you. Now, we're going to start wrapping this up because I feel that we would talk all day. And it's nighttime for you, it's lunchtime for me.
Wow.
So if someone is feeling stuck, one of our listeners out there is feeling stuck in either self-sabotage or anxiety or overwhelm, imposter syndrome, whatever it may be, what's the very first step you would suggest that they take to move forward?
The first step is going to be to get into your heart, have compassion for yourself. And the quickest way to do that is what I call the Loving Compassionate Benefactor exercise. It starts with the meditation, very, very simple. And again, because I have so many people who say, oh, can you take me through that again? I recorded it. It's on the Shift Your Life TV YouTube channel. But it involves bringing to mind someone who absolutely represents unconditional love and compassion to you. And you
Mm,
picture them with your eyes closed as if they were sitting or standing in front of you right now. And you look deeply into their eyes and you allow their love to just flow over to you and allow yourself to receive it without judgment. If you feel you have to send love to them first before you can receive it, go ahead. Send your love to them, and it'll be like this beautiful energy, maybe pink or golden, coming out from your heart, surrounding their head and shoulders. You'll see them respond. And now look even deeper into their eyes and sense the absolute depth of their love and compassion flowing to you. And at that point, typically you'll feel fullness or warmth in the center of your heart and the center of your chest. At that moment, you're in your heart. At that moment, it's
mm,
impossible to be in your frightened, unworthy self.
mm,
So it sort of helps get you out of this, I'm not worthy. You begin to suddenly get into your loving self. And then we carry that along where your loving benefactor moves around behind your shoulder, still sending you love. And you can take a deep breath as you exhale, open your eyes, and you still feel that fullness. And then that's the meditation, but the exercise is, can you now get up and go about your day with your benefactor coming with you, and you just
ah,
go and you still feel you're in your heart. You can carry that onto the stage, you can carry that to the grocery store, and you'll feel it when you're no longer in your heart. And you can stop for a moment, picture it again, do it. With practice, you don't need to close your eyes. I can sit here talking to you. If I were to get nervous about something you asked, all I would have to do is picture my loving benefactor standing behind this screen of my computer, sending me love and compassion. It would just get me right back into my heart. They come around, and now they're sending love not only to me, they're also sending it to you or anyone who's listening to this. And it's a
mm,
great way to prepare for giving a talk, doing a broadcast, or getting up on a
mm,
stage. So lots
mm.
of tools. We have a lot more. If someone, you could pick up the Bye-Bye Self-Sabotage, Drop Your
Yes.
Baggage, Love Your Life. It's on Amazon. It's the simplest way for most
Yes,
people to get it.
we will
Uh,
share links to that
yeah.
and also your YouTube channel, Shift Your Love. And it's interesting what you just were describing. I had a very, very difficult student, not
Mm.
because of any other reason, but obviously their own baggage. And and it didn't matter what I did or how I worked with this student, they were always defiant
Mm.
and they were not receiving of information. And so I would sense that this sort of feeling of like, oh, they're coming in next. Oh, that student. Oh,
Yeah.
I would dread that person coming in the
Mhm.
room. Then one day I decided to fill the room with love. Like I just visualized and just sat in this. I had a couple of minutes to myself
Mhm.
before they walked in, and I filled the room with love. And that was life changing. And I
Yes, it
never
is.
had a problem with that student ever again. But it took 18 months to get there to figure that one out.
Yes. I used to use that tool with violent patients when I worked on the inpatient psychiatric unit at the state hospital and worked
Mm,
some with forensic or the very violent, aggressive behavioral patients. And what I found was if I used that loving benefactor, just got into my heart and just surrounded compassion, emanated compassion out towards them, they would just stop in the middle of this sort of, aggressive. They'd just sort of like get shocked
mm,
and look at me and they'd suddenly go, and I had one that said, Dr. Latz, you need to get away from me. I don't want to hurt you. I said, well, I don't want to get hurt either, but you've got me against the wall here. And said, if you want to go over there, I'll go into the nurse's station and I'll talk to you when you're ready to talk. You're not going to talk to me. You're going to leave. I said, no, I'm not. And so I was just
mm.
in the nurse's station. They calmed down and they came back and they said, could I talk to you? I said, yes. And they go, you're not like the other doctors.
No, I'm a woo-woo doctor and I'm proud of it. And you know, talking about your work because it is very groundbreaking. I'm sure you've had your critics, and I'm sure you've had people within your medical field call you out on this work or say this is a sham, this is ridiculous. Have you ever cared what those people have thought about you?
In the beginning, yeah, I was nervous. I was afraid. It would take me back to being a child and sort of where they're like, "How did you know this song?" And I'd say, "I know it because it must have been on the radio before." And they'd be like, "They just said it's never been on the radio before. It's the first time it's been here in the States. It's the Beatles." And I was like, ah, just
Mm,
terrified. But over time, the people who used to sit there and naysay me and be like, oh, you're just nutty, quirky. A lot of people would refer patients to me and tell the patients, she's quirky, but it's in a good way somehow. And she seems to know how to do things. It has gotten to the point where some of those people now are coming back and go, you were actually on the cutting edge because you were talking about these things before mindfulness kind of came in. And
mm,
I said, no, I wasn't on it. I dipped back into the ancient wisdom and allowed that to flow through. And now what we're seeing is people now are starting to, suddenly become
mm,
aware of it. I've discovered it. No, you didn't, but okay.
mm. Yes. Wow.
So,
Well,
I embrace it more now. I used to have some of the woo-woo people who would look down upon me when they found out I was a physician. So I've walked that interesting
both.
sort of,
Yeah.
I've seen both sides and I kind of go,
Yeah.
look, yes, and, they both have good things. I'm not going to tell someone if you've got a ruptured appendix, I'm not going to say, let's all call in the ball of light and let's all chant over those.
All my spiritual friends.
That's it. I'm going to say, probably go to the hospital and get that thing out.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Latz, did these people try and silence you or stop you from
Yeah,
doing
at
the work
times.
that you were doing?
At times, yeah.
And
Yeah.
how did you deal with that? So if someone is here where they feel that they're being silenced in whether it's in life or in their careers or that their voices are stuck due to extrinsic factors, what would you say to those people?
I would say see yourself as a tea bag and you've dipped yourself into a very nasty cup. and and it's time to let's move our tea bag to the tribe that resonates with you. Okay. And
Find your people
yes,
and
yeah,
surround yourself with love.
that's right.
And
That's right.
not those toxic people who are vibrating at a very low level.
Yes. And, a lot of people who start understanding this, I'm going to go back to that old thing because I can bring them up. And I'll say, okay, yes, you're right that if you have a couple of guitars in a shop and you just pluck a string on one, the others will start just picking up the vibration. You can hear them start to resonate with that. But if you've got all these guitars resonating at this level and you think you can come in because I'm at this wonderful level and you're going to bring them up to you, but there's 10 of them down here doing this, trust me,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to come down here.
Mm-hmm.
And, why not surround yourself by people who inspire you to step up to the next vibration of closeness of who you are as a soul?
Mm. Very interesting. Over the years, I've done spring clean of friends, and it's very interesting because I was having a discussion with my husband last night. I said, you know what? There have been times in my life I've been really dismissive of people, and I feel really bad about that now. But then when I stop and think about it, I said, they're all the people who were vibrating at that low level. They were all the people that were making me feel tired, exhausted. They were not there for me. They didn't have capacity for anyone but themselves. And so I have naturally just eliminated those people from my life without even realizing that that's what I was doing at the time. I think if we listen to our gut, like I've learned to really trust my gut and my intuition over the years. And I've worked out that it's way smarter than my brain a lot of the time. And the other big lesson I've learned in the last few years is not to believe everything I think. Like, not everything I tell myself is the truth. And that as humans, we are all pathological liars.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very
And
interesting.
we get very influenced by collective consciousness. And that's, people figured that out on the social media feeds, or the social media figured it out,
Mm-hmm.
because if they think you've posted something here, they'll start giving you nothing but that, and we'll believe that's the holy truth, as
Yeah,
opposed to the other
yeah.
aspect we don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so,
yes.
you know,
So just because we think something, it doesn't mean to say it's true. And that is life changing just in that. Dr. Latz, thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom. There's so much more here. And I encourage people, as I said, have a listen to this episode and really receive it with an open mind and an open heart, because I have started to delve into a lot of this work myself of recent times. I'm nowhere near this level, but I'm receiving things at my own pace and integrating them in at my own pace. And it truly is life changing. I went from being a highly stressed, anxious human being to someone now who can really see the forest from the trees. And that's been my own journey, and everyone's journey is different. I understand that. But once again, thank you, Dr. Latz, for being here, for being so open as well, and
and
so sharing all this stuff that is truly life-changing and can help people have an incredible mindset shift.
and thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you. Take care, and we're going
You
to
too.
share all your links in the show notes too. Thank you. Bye, Dr. Latz.
All right. Take care.